boring. Greetings, Seeker. It is I, your friendly neighborhood rabbi, and I am reaching out to you today, not because, I think you're boring. Okay, were you saying something? Not at all. But I made this video because sometimes people feel like they're boring, whether that's true or not. Maybe somebody told them they were boring. Maybe they were having a conversation with somebody and they felt like that somebody wasn't really paying attention to them. And this is something that causes real anxiety. And I've had this feeling as well, especially when I make a super long video about rabbi stuff. But I'm gonna try to keep this one short. But I made this video because if you ever had the feeling that you were boring someone or that you might be a boring person, I want to help alleviate your anxiety by pointing out the 3 obvious things that you may be failing to do that's making you feel like you're boring. And we'll make this like a countdown. So the 3rd most obvious thing that you might not be doing that's making you boring is that you talk more than you listen. There's a very old saying out there, not necessarily a Jewish saying, but it sounds like something the Talmud would say. Don't quote me on that. It goes something like this. There's a reason that God created you with 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's to tell you that you should listen twice as much as you talk. If your tendency is to dominate a conversation, to fill dead space with just you talking, just so people feel like you're engaged with them, you might be missing out on what they have to say. Even if you've got something super important to say and you're funny and you're witty and you're very entertaining, they could experience that as you're not being interested in them. You're not being interested in what they have to say. And the trick is, if you listen to them while they talk, they're going to think you're way more interesting, even though they're the ones doing the talking. This is actually an experiment that Dale Carnegie did decades ago, where he went to a dinner party and he had nothing in common with the person sitting next to him. So he just asked him a question about his line of work and let the person talk. And the person was a professor in some very scientific, very dry academic subject, and they just talked and talked and talked, and Mr. Carnegie just sat there listening. And afterwards, this person reached out to him and said, I really appreciate your spending time with me at the dinner party. You were such an interesting conversationalist. Which is weird because Dale didn't say anything almost, but the person who did all the talking found him very interesting, not boring at all. If you feel like you're boring people, shut up and make room to listen to what they have to say. And ironically, by your saying less, they may find you more interesting. The 2nd most obvious thing that you may be failing to do if you think you're boring is you're not trying new things. The force of habit is a very powerful thing in our lives. The author Charles Duhigg, who wrote The Power of Habit, dug into some neuroscience research that found that the things that we develop as habits, the things we do over and over again, are programmed in the brain, not in the frontal cortex, but way down into the limbic system. That's why it's so hard to break habits. That's why the actions that we repeat over and over again are just programmed into us without even having to think about it. And so many of us walk through our day following these habitual patterns, and we don't try to break out of our comfort zone. We don't try to move from this part of our brain to this part of our brain by having new experiences. So if you're bored with your life, or if you think other people are bored with you, I will challenge you to go out and find something new. Try a new experience, go to a new restaurant, jump out of a new airplane. John, don't most people jump out of old airplanes? That's why they need to jump out? You know what I mean? Do something adventurous. I don't know, you do you. Just go to a different Thai takeout place than the Thai takeout place you usually go to. That way you could talk about this great new Thai takeout place you tried. Punchline is, the less time you spend in this part of your brain and the more time you spend in this part of your brain, the better stories you're going to have in that smaller fraction of time that you're talking instead of listening. And the number 1 most important thing, the most obvious thing that people forget to do that makes them boring, and we're going to go back to habit a little bit, is that they don't make a habit of regularly learning something new. Wait, John, I thought habits were about old stuff that you learn. Aha, here's where we're going to hack your amygdala. And I don't mean in a zombie movie kind of way. If you could take that brain process that controls habit and build in a habit of learning something new, then you're always engaging yourself, you're always engaging your frontal cortex with new information. This is why the rabbis of the Mishnah and the Talmud we're so keen on having people engage in regular Torah study and making a fixed time to learn Torah, whether it's reviewing old material and seeing it a new way or learning something completely different that you've never learned before. That's why they say make a fixed time for study, make it a habit, so that if you could take your brain's propensity for forming habits and use that as leverage to always be experiencing new things with your eyes, with your ears, with your mind, taking a new class that meets at a regular schedule, setting aside some time in the evening to read, I don't know, the weekly Torah portion or some commentary on it, and make that your fixed time for learning something new, you will always be gathering in more information, and you will increasingly have interesting stuff to say, to talk about, to ask other people about. So go back to that first one. If you want to listen more than you talk, take something new that you learned and say, hey, I learned this new thing. What do you think about that? Maybe that person will be interested in studying with you. And if you're willing to push yourself out of your comfort zone, if you're willing to make it a habit to learn new things and to engage with people and hear what they think about those new things that you're learning, I promise you, you will feel less boring. You will be less boring. I never really thought you were boring to begin with, but I am doing all the talking here. Seeker, thank you for watching this video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you have questions about anything I've talked about or comments, please put it in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your learning habits. How are you making time to learn every day? And finally, make sure you mash my face. I mean the picture of my face that allows you to subscribe to this channel so that we can learn together regularly and you might learn something interesting that makes you more interesting. Till the next video, Seeker. Peace.